Barbara Minuzzo, esponente questa volta del gruppo Ascolta Women, gruppo di autrici italo-australiane, dappertutto in Australia, forse anche hanno delle membri al di fuori dell'Australia. Però quindi diciamo buon pomeriggio a Barbara. Thank you for coming on to Radio Italia Uno Adelaide.
Buon pomeriggio a tutti gli ascoltatori e a lei, Tonio.
Ok, bene. Da come hai detto ascoltatori, sento un accento un po' calabrese, siciliano?
Sì, sono nata in Filadelfia, in Calabria.
Oh,
Yes, Philadelphia, a town that was built after an earthquake. It was originally called Castelmonardo,
mhm,
and then it was built in 1783, based and inspired by the American city of Philadelphia.
ok.
Um, yeah, so it had, it was very intentionally built the way it was, based on the inspiration from the Philadelphia in America.
Okay. So what's the connection then? Is it the
Yeah,
design of the town, of the village?
yes, and also they even took into account the fact that because because of the earthquakes, because of the actual so the design, yes, it's like the one in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So, yes, so you were born there. Well, when did you look? Normally we do the personal story later interview, but we've gone this way. So, when did you come to Australia?
Yeah, so we came in Australia in we left Italy January 1970. We arrived here with Galileo Galileo in
Oh,
February 1970. Yes.
okay. I was on the Galileo Galilei going in the opposite direction a couple of years later. Okay, lovely ship actually. Uh,
Yes.
so you came to Australia. So I'm guessing you didn't speak any English.
No, no, not at all. So I not a word of English.
Hmm.
So school was really tough, and I remember the sting of not understanding anything that was being said, the embarrassment of when a teacher from another class was scolding me for things that I didn't even comprehend, and that feeling never really left me, and it became my why and my source for empathy for others that come to new lands and new languages and new lives. Um, Subconsciously, it just stayed with me about being more empathetic to others that come to a new country.
Yes, important. Interestingly, one of my guests later on today is a minister in the state government, and she came to Australia as, I guess, a refugee from Cyprus. But we some interesting stories that go together, and we all share. Yeah, okay. Sometimes we forget these stories when it comes to the current people who are here either as refugees or have left war-torn situations. So are you still pursuing that? Obviously, not you're still pursuing. You are. You've noticed it, but you've said it. How are you pursuing that feeling, that approach?
Well, I still actually work with a multicultural women's group on an advisory capacity for grants and things like that. Also, up until recently, I did an 18-month project where I was delivering um, a project about if people want to seek work here, and really looking at their strengths and looking at their confidence and all the gifts that they would offer, because obviously some people might feel intimidated and so on, but really when we start talking about the strengths, they have the other languages, they have lots of strengths. They don't come to Australia um, with no skills. They bring all the skills that they had over there here. So there we're looking at all the skills that they could that would be part of the contribution to their resume, to really look at the strengths rather than what's wrong, what's missing. And that was quite
Yes.
very rich. I love working with multicultural communities.
Okay. Yes. Okay. They're very, very interesting, and obviously worthwhile and meaningful work. So let's go back to when you came to Australia and were at school with no English. That's a situation. It's a bit similar to my brother's. He had some English when he came back to Australia, but close to zero. How did you overcome that? Obviously you did overcome that, but it's the experience must have has left an influence in your thinking and in your behaviour.
Yeah, so what really helped me was I always loved reading. So because I was a bit of a loner anyway, the idea of reading lots also helped me a lot with quickly catching up with the rest of the classes. And yeah, it was hard because I always felt like I was tagging along with friends, but not really. I felt like I had no friends
Okay.
because I couldn't understand what was going on. People were speaking. I couldn't understand what was happening. And I did actually grow up with this inferiority complex where it stayed with me for a long time, of feeling not enough, feeling like, okay, feeling like I was different and so on. But that was still the case when I went back to Italy when I was 24 and a half. But when I went back the next time when I was 30, when I was 31, I did actually believe that actually I belong here in Australia. I mean, I loved being in Italy, the music, the food, the culture, the whole, that whole spirit of, being Italian, etc. But I actually also realized the blessings that I have here in Australia and how established I was here in Australia and how much I loved being part of that multiculturalism, part of that, having friends from all over the world, enjoying being here in Australia. So I no longer felt like I didn't belong here. I felt like it was almost like I didn't belong there and I didn't belong here. I
Yes.
just belonged wherever I was, like I belonged wherever I was. I was happy within myself. I was rock solid, thinking, this is good. I love where I live. And if I have to go back to Italy, I will. But you know what? I love it here.
Oh, okay, that's cool. And whereabouts here are you? Where are you joining us from?
I live in Melbourne, inner suburbia.
In
And
a
it
suburb.
always Yeah, and I always have, and I really love, the idea that, we can go to any restaurants of any culture. We can have friends from anywhere around the world. We learn from each other. You know, um, we laugh about each other as you know, uh, we share the recipes and we laugh about how the same we are, rather than people might think that, we're so different, but really we're more the same than different. That's the point of it all.
Yes, but the image I'm sort of we're doing this as a video meeting, but the background in your background image in you is not from Melbourne, I guess.
Oh, it's in Calabria.
Yeah.
So, having said all that, I mean, Calabria, where I come from, where I was born, of course, has magnificent views, magnificent places to visit. It's beautiful. I loved it there. Of course, all my family was there, you know, my grandparents were there, everything. But the point was, my granddad worked in Switzerland for 35 years. My dad worked in Switzerland for 9 before we came here. There was no employment or not many opportunities for much employment at the time while we were there. So therefore, we needed to move from there anyway, whether we whether we actually went to live in Switzerland or whether we went to live somewhere else. But there was very little employment. But it didn't take away from the fact that, Italy is beautiful. It has the most beautiful, places to visit. And I love the fashion. I love the music. I love everything about being, an Italian. I mean, I'm not wanting to ever, deny the fact that, because it's who we are. We can't separate the culture from who we are.
That's right. So, well, actually, we'll come back and talk about that and your writing, your practice. And then we'll have a short break for some messages from our sponsors, and we'll come back to speak to Barbara Minuzzo of Ascolta Women, Inc. So now let's talk about Ascolta Women, your engagement with the group, and then we'll talk about your own practice. So actually, I think the Ascolta Women was launched or created by some people based in Melbourne. Were you part of this original grouping?
Yes, so I am a founding member, but in reality, I didn't start when they all started, but I had started going to classes that Elisa Valmorbida from London, when she came to COASIT in Melbourne, she was running some creative writing classes, and I attended several of those. I then had lunch with Teresa Capetola, and I was so inspired by the group, and I was looking for continuing the writing, and I thought this would be a great way to continue with the writing. I mean, I had done lots of writing for work, but work was really factual, statistics, information. It wasn't really this creative writing, storia delle famiglie. It wasn't like that. It was all facts and figures, and trying to write in regards to safety for children, young people, road safety, not this type of writing. And this type of writing I actually felt was very therapeutic. I mean, I was already doing that myself, like in journal writing, but that was a private sort of writing where, whenever I wanted to do any reflections on something, that I would write in my little journal. But having met these wonderful women from around Australia, Canada, and overseas, in London and so on, I felt really connected to them. And there's no filters. There's no, like, we have a prompt and we write with that every second Tuesday for 2 hours. The leadership is shared in some ways because we're all welcome to say, let's write about this concept or that concept, so we're all encouraged to lead and give a prompt to write about. And then we have, a book that we normally bring out every year. So I'm hoping that a piece that I will write will go into this year's book.
Okay, and what's the theme for the next
This one
book?
is Il Corpo. It's about Il Corpo. So we've been discussing different body parts, but people tackle the theme from whatever angle, whether we're talking about, so let's say if we're talking about a leg or, an arm or a hand, and people really come up with all sorts of creative writing, because obviously, if I was writing about my leg, I might write about where, when I was young, I was in this massive car crash, and therefore, it played a big part in my life. I had to relearn how to walk, and how grateful I am now that I can walk, that, all is back to normal, and, and the idea of gratitude for all our body parts and how wonderful the body is, how it works well when it's, because, it's only when it doesn't work that all of a sudden we might think, oh, gee whiz,
Yeah, you miss things that we take for granted because they just work in the normal course of life. And so so how does your Italianness come through in your practice? Mhm. So I guess that's the theme of one of the themes, one of the motivators of the group. I guess you don't have to express Italianness in your work.
Yeah, so the writing possiamo scrivere in italiano, possiamo scrivere in dialetto,
Mm.
possiamo scrivere in inglese, possiamo scrivere in tutti e tre
Okay.
maniere. Perché it's our expression. So
Yeah.
however we feel. So that's why there's no filters. We can just write how we feel, what we're thinking, just really being creative about the whole whatever we're wanting to write, which is wonderful because it means that, having no filters means we can be truly ourselves. And we do the writing with no apologies. So in other words, if I'm writing about something, I'm not to excuse myself and say, look, I'm really sorry, I'm not really good at writing, or, there's no sort of story around apology or anything. We're supposed to just write, and then everybody gives us feedback about our writing, and everybody is so encouraging and so wonderful, and people are able to be fully self-expressed and really write about how they feel.
Yes. Well, you're saying earlier a lot of your professional, you've written a lot in a professional capacity and mostly for maybe policies and policy making. Um, how did you feel the transition?
Um, Well, it almost felt like all the sort of writing that I had done previously is mostly like head space,
Mhm.
whereas I can't operate without my heart anyway, but this is really heart space stuff. Like when I'm writing for work, it's information, facts, figures, it's that. Whereas when I'm writing in this type of setting, I'm really just speaking from my heart because there's no constraints. I don't
Okay.
have to think, hang on, I have to think about the health and safety about this or that, or, I don't have to think about, the legalities, or I'm just writing about what I'm feeling, what I'm it's all coming from my heart.
Excellent. Okay. Yes. And you said you're hoping to have a piece in the next anthology. Have you published in the previous anthologies?
No, no. So this is why this is a big thing for me. So I'm working really trying to um, uh, learn, how it's done, and also obviously I'm going to make a big effort to get a piece in.
Okay. That's well, we'll look forward to seeing that. And actually, as we were talking earlier, you mentioned another initiative of this group, the Ascolta Teatro. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so as a sort of skinny arm to the whole thing, that there is, because it's not just the fact that we can write. People can be expressive in other ways, like whether it's doing collage or sort of more artistic, as in less words and more art, or it can even be that the stories are actually put out as as with actors. So I think that it was great to have that other aspect because it means that there we can stretch our creativity.
Yeah. Okay. So now actually we have to move on. The next guest in a few minutes' time. I'd asked you earlier if there was a particular song or singer that you wanted to dedicate, and you've mentioned the song L'Appuntamento, which I don't think I know. At least I don't know the title. Maybe I'll recognize it once it goes. What can you tell us about L'Appuntamento by Ornella Vanoni?
Well, recently I was just listening to an interview that she did about the book that you know, came out, and there was a paragraph in there towards the end that was really um, impactful. Like I thought, wow, because it was really concise and compelling and about her. And I thought, wow, I'd love to be that way. I'd love to actually think this is how I'd like to be, remembered as someone that really made a difference, had an impact, that really listened, that continued to be of service to others. I mean, that's what we're here for.
Oh, okay, so now thank you, Barbara, for having come on to Radio Italia Uno dell'Aide from Melbourne, but Calabria in your background. And ecco l'appuntamento di Ornella Vanoni. Grazie, Barbara.
Grazie mille, ciao, a
Ciao.
presto. Ciao ciao.